Sick Harrison Price for Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, coming from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. And this program, a presentation of Bet 365. Matt Sick Harrison alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting the switches, conducting things. What a gorgeous afternoon in the city of Vancouver. I hope everybody is enjoying summer. I hope everybody is prepping for the week ahead for the Vancouver Canucks. A potential franchise-defining week.
I thought you were going to say, I hope everybody's calling their friends and relatives in the East and asking them how they're enjoying 40 degrees Celsius. I'd rather this myself. Mm-hmm. But yes, there is the Canucks as well.
A beautiful day for baseball, too, out at the Nat this evening with the Vancouver Canadians. But yes, huge week for the Vancouver Canucks. And already the biggest week ever for the Abbotsford Canucks. And we'll talk about all of that on today's big program. We start with the Whistler Golf Club poll question asking you if Thatcher Demko is the best chip to acquire a top six forward. Should the Canucks trade him? You can vote yes. You can vote no. Do so at the Sick Harrison Price X and YouTube channels.
And if you haven't connected the dots, the two things that Matt just mentioned are connected. Now more than ever, perhaps. Because in the wake of the win for the Abbotsford Canucks, it is official. Archer Silovs is anointed the Calder Cup playoffs, not finals, playoffs MVP. That's right. Further amplifying his knocks on the door for the National Hockey League. Again, whether the Canucks believe he's a National Hockey League goaltender or not, unclear. But those knocks are there. And if the Canucks do believe that it's there and believe that they can at least get by, I mean, again, the Edmonton Oilers got to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final this year and Game 7 last year with not great goaltending on paper or in actuality. Now, it might have been their downfall. But my point is, the Canucks don't even have Stanley Cup final aspirations. Can they get by with Lankinen and Silovs if Thatcher Demko ends up returning them a top six forward?
So as you say, Silovs, 24 starts, 16 wins, a 2.01 goals against average, a 931 save percentage, and 5 shutouts to take home the Calder Cup playoff MVP. This from our friends at AFP Analytics. The Canucks goalie situation is one to watch. Demko being rumored in trade potentially means extension talks not going as well as expected. 2, team is warming up to the idea of a Lankinen and Silovs tandem, as Blake outlined. And, of course, if he can stay healthy, Thatcher Demko is an upgrade for many teams. Let's just sort this out. So, on Silovs, and I have taken my cues on this from Kevin Woodley of In Goal Media. We were on the golf course with Kevin a couple of weeks ago, and one of the many things that he mentioned about Archer Silovs, and he's been steadfast in this, is Artie has struggled in arrangements where he is not the number one unquestioned starter. When he's had to split time with Nikita Tolopilo in the AHL, that has not been his best work. When the Canucks tried him as a seldom-used backup where he's playing once every 10 days, 2 weeks, as we know this past season, that did not work. He got 2 wins, both against the
When they had to ride him in the playoffs, he worked just fine.
When Latvia had to ride him, when the baby Canucks had to ride him, when the big Canucks had to ride him, he was great.
Yeah.
So, look, do you go back to the well and think, okay, now he's a year older, more time, he's better equipped with playing in a pure backup role? Do you have to commit to playing him as sort of a co-starter or a 1B starter with Kevin Lankinen? Or do you just punt this decision and say, okay, Archer Silovs is going to have to be a starter for us? Let's ride him one more year in the AHL and then make the decision thereafter. So the idea that they're warming to Lankin and Silovs, that is something that I'm more inclined to believe when I see. In terms of an extension for Thatcher Demko, I always thought this was a bit of a canard. I know Demko might want an extension. Players and agents typically do. But I don't know why you would do that as the Vancouver Canucks when you've got time here and should use it on a player who, let's face it, has been injury-riddled. And if Demko goes out and has another Vezina caliber season, well then, hey, price tag goes up. You're either comfortable paying it or you've got a heck of a trade chip at the deadline. Or maybe Lankinen becomes that trade chip. But here's the thing. The goaltending market actually looks reasonably strong here. Frank Saravelli reporting that nearly 1/3 of the league is in the mix for a goalie this summer. And that's everything between a team that is looking to land a starter. I think you can put Edmonton, Philly, Columbus in that mix. Teams that are looking for a co-starter, if you will. I think you can put Detroit and Utah in that mix. And then other teams that are looking for a pure backup, Jersey, San Jose, Montreal, Florida. There's a number of teams that would like to strengthen their crease one way or the other. This is a very weak free agent goalie class. In fact, it's so weak that Jake Allen is number one, and with a drop-off after him. Jake Allen himself, I mean, co-starter at best, right?
Yep.
So you're on to the trade candidates if you're looking for a goaltender. Now, Joel Hofer in St. Louis is available. RFA. Bennington is the starter there. Blues GM Doug Armstrong, quote, "I'm very comfortable. We can match any offer if we choose to match it." It's offer sheet. I guess this is my shot across the bow. You can go after him. You're not going to get him. There's John Gibson in Anaheim, but of course, the luster is off his star because he's not even the starter anymore in Anaheim. Lucas Dostal took over. And then you're into Elvis Merzlikins, who hasn't been good enough for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So you put all of that together and you couple it with Thatcher Demko's resume, and by all accounts, Thatcher has done very well here health-wise since the end of the season. If you have a team that believes in Thatcher Demko, and David Pagnotta has reported this, then maybe they are willing to give up a young, controllable top six forward. And Pagnotta says that is what it will take to get Demko out of Vancouver.
Here's my concern, and I'm sure Frank has been told that from somebody, and I don't dispute that at all. But in actuality, in execution, is something different than what is being told to an insider at this stage in the game. And even in a soft market of availability for goaltenders, history has shown us that goalies just are not worth what they used to be, especially a goalie with an injury-plagued career that Thatcher Demko's got right now. Yep. So in theory, it's super intriguing. In execution, do the Canucks actually get the kind of player that they want?
And I hear your mouth, but Utah played Vejmelka far too much last year. I'm not even sure if he's a surefire number one.
Nope, unproven.
They have a ton of young assets. They're looking to take a big step forward in their second season in Salt Lake. Columbus has a pretty good group of skaters, including a bunch of young forwards. Goaltending severely let them down last year. All the insiders say Columbus is poised for huge moves this summer. Is there an overpay or fair value there? Demko and Tocchet, great relationship there. Rick's in Philadelphia. They could sure use an upgrade in goaltender. They've already made a move here with Trevor Zegras trying to get more competitive. And then, dare I speak its name, but you mentioned the Edmonton Oilers, and it would be an in-division trade. And frankly, I think some of these trade scenarios may well involve an extension for Thatcher Demko. So could you stomach sending him to Edmonton and solving perhaps their biggest issue, getting them over the top for a cup? That one I have more trouble with because I'm just not sure there's the uncontrollable top six forward there. But the fact of the matter is, what did I list? Just 5 teams?
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, Detroit as well, where they have to be better next year. The Yzer plan is not going well there, and whether they're going to ride with Mrazek or whether they want to get better and go. So you should be able to, Blake, drum up a market here and play one of these teams off the other if you are dangling, let's face it, the best upside goaltender out there. Hofer is fine and all. He's a very good young goaltender taking the step forward. But, if you're looking to win, this is Thatcher Demko.
Yep. As long as he's available to you. And that's what they're going to hear back from every single other team that they talk to. So, again, if the market is there and you can realize, like who you even angling for? You mentioned Utah. If you can entice them. Do you think they're giving you Barrett Hayton?
I think there's a chance. Yep.
I mean, if it gets, they're not giving you Cooley, they're not giving you Keller, and they're not giving you Gunther.
No, wouldn't think so. I think you're looking at Hayton and Schmaltz there.
Yeah, Hayton and Schmaltz. Mm-hmm. But you'd love it to be a center, in which case it's Hayton. Maybe
Schmaltz has played center too. I know he played some left wing this year, but he took a lot of face off. He's played center in the past. Mm-hmm.
He's 29, and you got to negotiate.
And he's
with
got
him
1 year. Yeah, exactly. And he's an American player who has played entirely in the U.S. So, yeah. Oh, I'm not. Like they're not easy trade fits here, and you may have to involve other pieces on potentially both sides of the ledger. But what is shaping up here is the notion that, and we're going to talk about it here in a bit, the 15th overall pick isn't worth what typically a 15th overall pick is worth.
And even then, 15th overall pick is only worth so much. Yeah.
You've made the decision, or at least unless somebody bowls you over, you're keeping Elias Pettersson. You don't want to trade DPD. You want to keep that good-looking defense core, at least the top end of it, intact. Okay, maybe you could be tempted on Mancini, but he's not getting you a top six forward. So Wielander, Lekramaki, Demko, and of the three, only one of them is a proven NHL commodity. Mm-hmm. So if we're getting down to brass tacks here, it may well be, as the poll question suggests, your best chip to play to get that top six forward via trade is your goaltender. Now, did you vote yes or did you vote no?
I'll vote yes in terms of with the assumption that is the value that you can get, that you can actually get that player. But I'll also say, do you think, if the poll question was, do you think that Thatcher Demko can fetch you a top six center? I would probably say I don't think that. But if we're operating under the assumption that he does, then I'll say yes, you do that.
Well, you helped fashion the poll question.
I know, but the people didn't hear that debate.
Okay.
So now I'm recreating it.
Got you.
Again, I'm skeptical of value of goalies these days. You don't see a lot of high-priced goalie acquisitions. That's all. Mm-hmm. And I think Hayton for Demko would be a pretty big trade. Like that's a significant player for player trade.
No question. I voted yes as well. But here's the thing. If you're all about making the playoffs next year, are you better off with the top six forward in Lankinen and Silovs, or Lankinen and a pure NHL backup? Or are you better off being great in goal with two excellent goaltenders, that defense, keeping scores down, and winning your fair share of tight games? I think it's the latter.
I hear that theory.
Mm-hmm.
When you have to get to a critical level of offense, I think.
Yeah, but
I don't even think the Canucks are an average offense.
No,
right now.
I agree with you. In that theory, you're on the free agent market for a couple of forwards, and you try and get by.
Yeah, and you could try to go that route instead.
You're Michael Granlund and another forward, and
yep,
something like that.
Yep. Is that the better path to the playoffs if that's the goal of this team? And again, we have to put ourselves in their shoes because that's ultimately, you can all have your let's tear it down. I don't like any of these players except for Hughes. I get it, but that's not what they're doing. So within the boundaries of what you expect them to do, what's the best path to being good, not sewering the future, et cetera, et cetera? Yeah, you're right. Probably holding on to both keepers and finding offense in a different way. That might be the quickest path and the easiest path to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I think so. The Whistler Golf Club is open and taking your tee times, your bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Prime time's filling up fast. Check out Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill overlooking the 18th green. Blake and I have spent some time there. Beautiful spot, shaded. You can watch the golf bear saunter by from time to time. If you have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups. We have the Hall of Fame class announced here, breaking news, but so let's get to the headline there, and then we'll discuss it later in the show. Former Vancouver Canuck Alex Mogilny finally gets
in. That's a surprise. People weren't expecting it.
Very surprised because it was such a strong crop of first-year eligibles. Also, Penticton's Duncan Keith and his dirty elbow also get into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
We talked about the possibility of this off the air before, but there are so many ties that bind here to the Canucks. A guy that crushed Canuck hopes, Zdeno Chara, gets in. A guy that was a perennial thorn in their side, although they ultimately won it over on him, and Joe Thornton as well in his time with the San Jose Sharks, and he talked about Mogilny as well. So the four men's players that get in, Botterill gets in, and Decker on the women's side as well. But the four NHL players, there's Canuck ties to all four of them. 3 rivals, 1 former Canuck. Pretty cool.
And if I can just reference, we used to have Shireen Williams on our program weekly on the football side of things. She is a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame selection committee. And she used to take us inside their deliberations every year at Super Bowl. And this has been a long-standing phrase for electors at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Can you write the history of the sport? Can you write the history of the league without that figure? If the answer is no, then they're probably a Hall of Famer. Alex Mogilny was not only a dazzling player on the ice, some of the best hands that I've ever seen, an elite goal scorer at his peak.
But his bravery as a human, needs to be chronicled.
And if you haven't seen that amazing documentary of his defection from the Soviet, because remember, some of those players eventually got permission, right?
Yeah.
Like Fetisov, who was the captain of the Soviet Red Army team, his story is that one day he gets called to a building and is given a visa and paperwork and told, yes, you're allowed to go now to New Jersey in the NHL and North America. In Alex Mogilny's case, this is a cover of night escape story. And to be a hockey player of that prominence, because of course he played in those World Juniors with those great teams, Bure and Fedorov, to be a hockey player of that stature back in the old Soviet Union, where sport was very much a propaganda tool, much like it is now, if not for international sanctions, to just up and leave your family behind and embark on a new life in North America, in the NHL, without permission. I mean, that's the type of stuff that just doesn't happen these days, right?
Nope.
Like you tell a 12-year-old he wasn't allowed to leave his country? Like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. But he's a great player. No, didn't work that way. So kudos to McGillney and to the rest of this class. Who are the first-time eligibles that didn't make it? You were talking to me yesterday about how it could be a 5 for 5 first-time eligibles.
One more big one. Carey Price, wasn't he? Carey Price didn't make this grade. Am I missing something here?
Maybe the career was not quite long enough.
Carey Price is going to get in.
I would think so.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. All right, so there's your Hockey Hall of Fame. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, and Foolish Winery. BC has a professional hockey champion. Canucks Sports and Entertainment has its first champion. And Abbotsford has a winner. The Baby Canucks defeat Charlotte 3-2 in Game 6, win the AHL's Calder Cup under head coach Manny Malhotra in his first year on that bench, his first year as a head coach. Let's hear from the former Canuck and now coach of the Baby Canucks on the pride he feels regarding this team.
Watch the journey of this team throughout the course of the year and watch them grow as players and watch us grow as a team. It's such an unbelievable feeling as a coach.
Pretty pumped.
And he should be.
Yeah.
Look, he says unbelievable journey. This team was down and nearly out in December. They were on the outside of the playoffs looking in. They looked at best to be a middling team in the HL Pacific Division.
A first-round departure, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They finish the year. How about this? Their final 42 games, which is roughly half a season, and this includes postseason, but just think of it in those terms. 32-5-5. They win 32 of their final 42 games.
Well, they win 5 of them, and so many in overtime too.
Well, that's it. 5 regulation losses in the final 32. They go 8-0 in this postseason following a loss. When they got beat, they got right back on the horse and they won the next one. And of course, Manny, an elite penalty killer in his day. We saw that with the Canucks. 88% in the postseason. It's oftentimes a special teams game. So just an extraordinary effort. The word they used a lot was resiliency. Manny's too humble to take the credit, but he did a sensational job. Brandon Astle, their play-by-play man, said often during the playoff run, the second period was the Canucks' best period all year. Tells me Manny and his staff is in that first intermission, making the adjustments and getting their team better prepared to play the final 40 minutes. Silovs is the MVP here, but there are so many heroes. From Dave Hall, our friend at Canucks Army. Linus Karlsson, 14 goals, including the game winner last night. Arshdeep Bains, 17 assists, including on the game winner last night. We talked about Arshdeep yesterday. Couldn't buy a goal. Goes like a quarter of a season into the playoffs without a goal. And then just rips them left, right, and center in his final 7-8 games in this postseason. Karlsson, 26 points. Bains, 24. Sammy Blais, 19. The kid on defense, Kirill Kudryavtsev, plus 18. And there's even deeper and more impressive metrics on Kudryavtsev. Blake brought you that story a couple of days ago. Blake, the win was so big, it even got Francesco tweeting.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
The long dormant account.
And Francesco even making a funny. Heart, hustle, and history made. A testament to the hard work, leadership, and character of our players, coaches, and staff. Proud of this team and what it means for Canucks hockey. And then there's a hashtag, team not for sale. Well done, Francesco. Not a sentence that's often uttered on this show. But I thought he hit all the right notes in his tweet. And it's clear he's heard the noise about sell the team.
And Matt, this is the team. Again, another thing we need to underline about this team is who didn't win the Calder Cup for this team. We're going to talk about who did, but who didn't? One of their leading point getters all season long in Aatu Räty. DP, Elias Pettersson, who was a rock for them for 70% of their regular season, didn't play for them. Tom Wielander could have been a part of that team for the Calder Cup.
We were midway through the postseason going, wouldn't Wielander look great now?
Didn't get inserted into that lineup, didn't play. So this isn't the B lineup, but they could have been better. Believe it or not, they could have been better. A couple of those losses maybe are reverted with the stellar play of Pettersson and Räty. So to get big pieces, I mean, Wielander would have been a bonus that we don't even know about. But we know Räty and Pettersson were big parts of that team. Taken away. Didn't skip a beat.
Did you mention Danila got another goal? We'll put ourselves on errors and omissions because Jeff and I were musing yesterday. I'll just run the same lineup. Here comes Danila with his fourth and scored huge goals. Huge goals.
Also, all
in the
postseason.
playoffs.
Yeah, he doesn't have the sheer volume of Linus Karlsson, obviously, but and you got to give some credit to Manny Malhotra there too. Danila Klimovich, and maybe this is a good lesson for coaches everywhere. Does he have his limitations? He does. So you don't play him in all situations, but you also don't let the young man get completely parked.
Right.
Manny Malhotra deployed him late in games. And yes, in playoff freaking overtimes. Mm-hmm. He didn't say, I can't trust the guy. I'm not putting him out at all.
No. Nope.
He just said, I'm going to bide my moment. You're going to take my time here and choose my moments. And he put him out there. And guess what? Klimovich paid dividends.
He did score the second goal last night. Jet Wu was a factor for this team. A Canucks second-round pick of yesteryear who may not be done trying to climb the ranks here. They're down 2-1 after the first period last night. Klimovich gets them tied early in the second. Then they take a couple of penalties. They kill those off. They get up 3-2. They take another penalty. They kill it off. Danila takes one in the third period, up 3-2. They kill that one off. So just every part of this club contribute. Chase Waters, the captain with an assist last night. He got the Calder Cup, got to lift it and bring it in the room for his teammates. So just a marvelous, marvelous season for Manny Malhotra and the Abbotsford Canucks. And congratulations to Ryan Johnson and Manny Malhotra and the coaches and the players and the staff and everybody who made this team a champion.
Incidentally, one more thing for Kudryavtsev, because we've just talked about how good he is defensively a lot of the time. He ends up as the top point getter on D, tied with Wielander. But Christian Wielander runs the American Hockey League. Like the guy is it's
his show.
It's his show. He knows how to be an American Hockey League point getting defenseman, and he was tied with Kudryavtsev.
Nobody has AHL'd better than Christian Wielander.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, and our old friend Noah Strang, actually the Daily Hive, noted this. Canucks moving their AHL affiliate to the Lower Mainland has been a massive success. They've built an excellent farm team, made it easy to send players up and down, and been able to keep a close eye on development. And that's a very important point here. This is a buy for the community championship. It's one thing if your farm team is in Utica or a disparate part of the continent that you have no attachment to. But this happened on home soil with so many of the team employees and most importantly fans in the Fraser Valley, the greater Vancouver community. And that also includes the Punjabi community. And I saw Randeep Janda of Hockey Night in Punjabi with a tweet last night. A proud moment for the Punjabi community in BC and Canada. Manny Malhotra, Harry Mahesh, who's an assistant coach, Arshdeep Bains, Jujar Kara, who of course was acquired late in the season by Abbotsford and played a big role as well, especially down the stretch when they were on that 13-game winning streak and in the playoffs. And Chico Danjal, who is the equipment man, used to work up in PG, are AHL champions. That matters too.
Yeah.
That's meaningful too.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of people taking great delight in this championship, including the pride of Surrey, Arshdeep Baines. Let's hear from him on the ice last night, talking about how this one also needed a grind right to the final buzzer.
That was so special. I think, like our team identity all year, we're a resilient group. We were down 2-0 early, and we just fight back every single game, and I couldn't be prouder of this group.
As the hometown kid, how much does it mean to you to have played such a big part in bringing the Calder Cup to Abbotsford?
Yeah, it's special. I mean, it was nice to kind of get better and better as the playoffs went, and help this team throughout most of it. And getting towards the end, it was awesome to feel like an important piece of this team.
Oh, and was he ever?
2 Surrey boys, 1 FSJ, Tristan Nilsson born in Fort St. John.
Yep.
And Kara, banging around, demoted from the National Hockey. He's been an AHL player for the most part here in the last few years. I'm sure, winning one like this is pretty cool for Jujar.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're in driving distance of the home rink, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This would have been special anywhere, but that all of this is happening in our community with players from here. In case of Manny, an attachment here, right? Was a Vancouver Canuck, married a BC girl, had a son playing in Chilliwack in the BCH. So there are just so many community ties and binds to this group that makes it an uplifting championship. More than your garden variety AHL championship. And there's not been a lot of professional hockey trophies lifted in this province, Blake. I know the Canucks affiliate of yesteryear had one in the past. We had talked about the Vancouver Millionaires and Victoria in the early days of the NHL. But there hasn't been a lot of professional hockey trophies lifted in this province. And there you go. You got one last night.
And credit to, and there's not a lot of credit I like to give to the business side of the Vancouver Canucks, but naming them the Canucks is probably a pretty good one. And
it's a no-brainer for me. I know you wanted to find them a cool
alternative
deep
name.
Cut and B-side nickname, as is your I
wondered if it was a chance just to sell more jerseys, if you have something new, because then you have to find something new.
The Johnny Canuck logo is, yeah.
But in this case, it means that in situations like this, when you go on a deep playoff run, guess what? All your Vancouver Canuck fans, they've got the right colors for the building. They get in there. It's all applicable. And then the Johnny Canuck logo is transferable from the Vancouver to the Abbotsford side of things. So, all's fair no matter what jersey you're wearing. So you wonder sort of what the trickle up is from a championship like this. We're covering the hockey side of things, but from the business side of things, there might be a little bit of trickle up as well here for the Canucks in crafting it like this. I mean, they played the Charlotte Checkers, not the Charlotte Panthers. Mm-hmm. And, there's a bit of a disconnect then, I think, between Charlotte and the parent team. No disconnect. I think everybody that was there in Abbotsford cheering it on knew they were cheering on part of the Canucks organization, and they like that.
What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to?
They're up to a lot. It's that time of year. It's beer season, don't you know? The box of tricks is there available for you. If you like to have a little bit of a variety when you reach into your new purchase of beer, well, get the Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale, get the Rough West Coast IPA, and then the 2 brand new beers, the Spin Tropical DDH IPA and the Obedience India Golden Ale, all in one box. The box of tricks available now.
Just want to get back to Alex McGillney for a second, because a few people on Twitter have reminded me of
the Adrian Aucoin story.
The Adrian Aucoin, Mike.
I just saw it.
Story.
Amazing. Just amazing.
I mean, we're talking about his brave defection from the Soviet Red Army team at an international tournament, and how all of that was done with the Buffalo Sabres cover of night.
This is in the Canucks room.
Yeah. So, of course, he finds himself on the Vancouver Canucks with Mike Keenan as the head coach, Iron Mike. And, of course, Mike could be very tough on players, including in front of the group. Adrian Aucoin to the Vancouver Province a number of years ago, quote, one time we're in the locker room and Keenan is all over him. And we're like, holy shit. Normally he's not on McGillney like that. McGillney looks up and says, Mike, have you ever heard how I defected? How they fucking threatened my family? How they wanted to kill everybody? You think you're fucking scaring me? Aucoin says the room was like, holy shit.
And stop Keenan in his tracks.
Mike didn't know what to say. He normally got the last word.
Chef's kiss.
Oh,
honestly.
absolutely.
Like, absolutely perfect.
I had a good personal relationship with Alex McGillney when he was in Toronto playing for the Maple Leafs after winning a cup with New Jersey. In fact, Blake, I met him on September 12th, 2001 in a little lounge off the Maple Leafs room. And having come from New Jersey, his family was still all there. And that was the day where the smoke was billowing out of Lower Manhattan all across the tri-state area. The visibility was poor. And Alex was sitting there day after day in training camp in that lounge watching CNN and the other news networks and in constant contact with his family. And so we would sit there and we would talk. Like this was a period of time where like hockey didn't mean anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like everybody was sitting there just talking about world events and what happened on September 11th. So after a few days, of course, every leader across the world is making, statements. And I walk in there one day and Vladimir Putin's sitting there. And I said, Alex, you kind of look like Putin. He's like, me? Putin? He goes, do you know where I'm from? I go, yeah, you're from Khabarovsk. He goes, do you know where that is? I go, yeah, that's extreme eastern Siberia. He goes, people where I'm from, they look more like Chairman Mao than Vladimir Putin. And just brought down the house. He had that dry wit and humor. And this story about Keenan, like Alex McGillney was not shy to share his hockey intellect and IQ. Mm-hmm. Like if there was something that wasn't going right, particularly on the power play, because he was just such a great power play player, like he would be on the ice willing to, sit there with the coaches and talk about the chess pieces and where they were.
He's a smart guy.
He was a highly intelligent hockey player. I can remember covering him after they lost a game to a really terrible Chicago team. I want to say 2-1 in overtime. I said, what went wrong out there, Alex? And he said, well, the power play, we had more than enough chances, but we didn't score because we never practice it. And I go, excuse me? He goes, yeah, that's right. We never practice it. He goes, all I'm saying is it's hard to score in this league 5-on-5. In New Jersey, we practice the power play all the time. So the next day I have to go to Pat Quinn, of all people, and go, Pat, Alex says you aren't practicing the power play as often as you should. And I was just ready for Grizzly Bear Pat, right? Like I thought he would rear up and when did you play the game?
Yeah.
And Pat goes, well, you guys always tell me I never listen to the players, but this is something that's come back from the players and we're going to practice it more fulsomely tomorrow. And like we are shocked. We're like, oh my God, that went from Alex McGillney's lips to Pat Quinn's practice plan.
That's good.
I think that shows it's an example of what people in the league, how they regarded Alex McGillney and what they knew about him and his hockey intellect. So this is an awesome day for old Canucks fans who remember him as a Vancouver Canuck.
Well,
because Blake, let's remember, he authored one of the great seasons in the history of this franchise.
And let's not forget how much he was a Vancouver Canuck. Considering I think people took a lot of ownership of Roberto Luongo, and will continue. The ratio is not too dissimilar here. He played 999 games. And yes, he was in Buffalo for 6 years. And
990.
Yeah, that's what I said, 990 games.
Oh, okay. I just said 999.
381 of those with the Buffalo Sabres. The Canucks are 312. He's only 69 games shy of what he played with the Sabres. So while your mind's eye might picture him, he was largely a Sabre, by a smidge, the Canucks are almost able to lay equal claim to Alex McGillney. I mean, that was a bigger number than I expected to see here. But he played generally longer seasons with the Canucks than he was able to play with the Buffalo Sabres due to some nagging injuries. So he's yours too. He is. Celebrate him.
Well, and look, he scored 76 goals in 77 games one year in Buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, that was his Mona Lisa, to be sure. It was a 127-point season, far and away his best single-season campaign. In fact, he only broke 100 points twice in his career, and I think that's probably one of the things that had held him back from election to the Hockey Hall of Fame. So that one stood alone. But his next best season is the 55-goal, 107-point season for the Canucks in 1995-96. I mean, to this day, that stands.
And Dead Puck had started. Dead Puck was just starting at that point. So it was that 100-point season is maybe 4 years previous is probably 125 points or something like that. That's how good he was.
It, to this day, is the third most prolific goal-scoring season in Vancouver Canucks history. Pavel got to 60 twice. Alex McGillney at 55 is the next one up.
It's a hell of a year.
The 107-point season, to this day, number 3 all-time with the Vancouver Canucks. Hank got 112 in his Hart Trophy season. Pavel got to 110. Then it's McGillney and Bure with a 107-point season, third all-time for the Vancouver Canucks. So he was extraordinary. Some of the best hands I have ever seen in my life, Blake.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he used to stand like top of the circles in practice, blue line, and try and flip pucks and get them to stop on the top of the net. And I'll be damned how often he did it.
Yeah. No, he was a marvelous player. And if you happen to be a video game player, McGillney in NHL 94 and 95
goodness. Forget about it.
Was
off the half wall.
Brilliant.
Forget about it.
He was a cheat code.
Yeah. The other thing I saw, I saw a willing mentor later in his career, especially with young Russian players, because you got to understand, some of these young Russian players, they come to the NHL and they're encountered by Alex McGillney and they're bug-eyed, right? Because this is the guy who defected.
Yeah.
So just an enormous day, I think, for the sport, because, look, they're all great players. Then you get to the Hockey Hall of Fame. There are very few people in hockey who want to step out on a political limb at any time, let alone during the Cold War. And Alex McGillney basically helped internationalize the game and bring those Russian players into the NHL fold. And needless to say, the NHL has been so strengthened by the participation of those great Russian players. In fact, one of them set the all-time goal-scoring record this season. So there you go. There's our ode to Alex.
Yes. He was amongst the first guys I was able to, that was my rookie season, if you will, was 99-2000 covering the Canucks. So
yeah,
got 47 games worth of Almo in the dressing room.
Yeah. Any interactions that stand out?
No, I mean, I was a kid, so I was just, googly-eyed and
holding the mic.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
minding my own business.
I'll say this:
but he was always comfortable.
Humor was so dry.
Yeah.
It was he's one of my favorite players of all time, and so glad to see this. Okay, Frank Saravelli saying he wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks fall short on Marco Rossi, and then sit this round of transactions out. Blake. We're feathering the nest. We may run out of time here. Or maybe we just don't have the assets or the gumption to part with what is going to be required to part with, to land what you're looking to land. Here's the thing. We mentioned it earlier. 15th overall is not what it's worth in previous drafts. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the cap is no longer flat. Number two, this isn't a particularly ballyhooed class of draft prospects. And 15 is kind of on the outside where it drops off. So they've offered 15th and a player to Minnesota for Rossi. That hasn't been good enough. It's a game of chicken now. Every hour that goes by, everybody, I think Bill Guerin gets closer and closer to having to settle for futures and not roster players,
or
for Marco
or
Rossi.
settle for not trading him. That's the other option that he's got in terms of settling. But he's
He
got
would have till
to pay the man,
December.
though.
He would have till December, though, right? So Rossi has rejected the short-term deal. He wants the long-term deal.
Yeah.
We saw this scenario play out with Willie Nylander several years ago with Toronto. As an RFA, there's a date in December. I forget if it's the 1st or the 10th or somewhere in there.
10th, 15th or something.
You have to resolve the contract by that date or the player is ineligible to participate in the NHL season. So you have a firm deadline coming up in December if they continue to be at a contract impasse. Maybe the Rossi camp budges and takes the shorter-term bridge deal. In fact, you can make an argument for a bridge deal if you're the agent and the player, right? Like with where the cap is going.
Yep.
If you think you're going to continue to ascend over the next couple of years, you could be in line for way more
1 or
than
2 year deal.
7x7. So that is a possibility, and it'd be a little awkward if him going back into that room, right, with everything that's now been said and tried. But also this from Cam Robinson, and Cam usually joins us on Tuesdays. He's traveling today, so we're going to catch up with him tomorrow from the draft. When was the last time this many first-round picks were available? Teams always listen, but this year fistfuls of clubs are actively trying to move their pick for right now players. It's the perfect storm of too many buyers, not enough sellers, and a slightly underwhelming class.
For people that are disappointed if the Canucks do pull out of the Rossi thing, here's the silver lining. Again, if they execute on this one, is that's going to be the more expensive of the trades. That's the prime kind of target, a young player in ascension, but that has proven they can do it. That's the most expensive brand of trade the Vancouver Canucks could pull off, which is why they might ultimately fall short in terms of the assets that they can tempt with Bill Guerin with. What they need to be involved in is something a little more along the lines of, or what they could be. It looks like Thomas Hertl is headed towards Carolina from Vegas. Should the Canucks have been in on something like that? Should they have been offering to take William Karlsson off the hands of the Vegas Golden Knights?
Well, it sounds like Vegas wanted to move more money than just Karlsson if this Hertl thing is going to end. There's rumors that he's going to Carolina.
But are they going to trade Karlsson as well? I don't know.
I don't think so.
But, those are basically giveaway deals. It's going to be for futures, but that's all the Vancouver Canucks really have is futures. And you could say they shouldn't be giving up whatever they have. That's a fair argument.
Fair.
But if you want to be better for next season, that's the easiest way for the Canucks to be better next season rather than take away from the roster that they currently have. So that's going to be the disappointing thing, is to see what the Hertl trade ultimately boils down to look like, and why weren't the Canucks involved with Vegas on something for him or for William Karlsson. And can they get involved with somebody else that also wants to liquidate for futures? Because that might be the path of least resistance for the Vancouver Canucks.
A reminder, the Daily Face-Off free agency show, that goes July 1st, Canada Day, a week from today, everybody, and they're kicking off at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So join host Tyler Yaremchuk, analyst Jeff Merrick, Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus, Puckpedia founder Hart Levine will be there breaking down all the contractual situations. Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby. They are going to have your league-wide coverage starting 8 a.m. July 1st, a week from today, on the Daily Face-Off channel. And that's all brought to you by the Nation Network. One last piece of business here before we get into our menu and bets of the day, Bet365 bets of the day. The New York Rangers had to decide this week whether they were going to keep the pick that was involved in the JT Miller trade, number 12 overall, or whether they were going to relay that pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins and keep their first-round pick next year. The Rangers have decided to convey that 12th overall pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins this week. So Pittsburgh will be picking 11th and 12th, or have the 11th and 12th choice. They could talk about trade there in Pittsburgh. And they will keep their first-rounder next season. And in so doing, Blake, take the Canucks off the hook the pick they traded for Marcus Pettersson could land Gavin McKenna.
Yeah.
Because, well, I suppose there's a world where the Rangers...
There's still a world.
Pittsburgh was a bigger world in
Yes.
terms of getting the first overall. So there you have it. The JT Miller, Marcus Pettersson effectively became a three-way trade because of that pick being used in both deals. That is now buttoned up, and now we can follow their trade trees, including who that pick is used for next season. Time now for our menu, brought to you by Greta. Fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away, pregame, postgame. You were steps from the arena and the stadium. But if you're planning a summer sociable, a team-building event, big party, got friends from out of town in, you need a venue, check out Greta. They have the awesome arcade that encircles the bar. There's really a game for everyone. And a fantastic street food menu, unpretentious, fantastic selection of beer, cocktails. For more info, book your event, gretabar.com. Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We're going to talk to Frank Corrado here. Frank, of course, was a member of the last Canucks farm team to make a deep run. That was the Utica Comets 10 years ago, so he can very much talk to what a deep AHL playoff run means for some of these players. Plus, we'll talk to Frank about Demko and other trade and free agency happenings here as we get closer to Friday's draft and next Tuesday's Canada Day. Later in the program, the golf report brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club after Keegan Bradley's famous victory on home soil. And a big 24-48 hours here in the world of soccer, where you not only have Canada at the Gold Cup, but you also have the Whitecaps back in action tomorrow at BC Place.
Some of
San
the Whitecaps.
Diego.
Some of the Whitecaps.
And a number 1 versus number 2 showdown atop the MLS West. That is all coming up. Time now for our bets of the day, brought to you by Bet365. Blake, I told you I'm going all futures on NHL draft props this week. So
I did a future as well. I had 3-0 Canada in the El Salvadorian showdown today.
Tonight, yeah.
I'm going to, there are some holes here. Just a little tip on Bet365's anytime goal scorers. Like a guy like Jaden Nelson, God bless him, he's plus 105. No, thank you. A guy like the red-hot Tajon Buchanan, plus 200 as an anytime goal scorer.
What's my boy Promise?
Promise is no thank you as well.
Oh.
He's the worst odds, minus 110.
Yeah. So they're expecting him to score.
Buchanan plus 200. There you go.
Is Jonathan David playing tonight?
He's played so much lately. I wonder if they sit him, put him on the bench. He's played a lot.
What about Schaufelberg?
Yep, Schaufelberg's at plus 200 as well. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
He made his mark on a bunch of those tournament games last year. You wonder whether he's got a turn there. I've mentioned I'm going to NHL draft props all week. Utah owns the number 4 overall pick for now. There's a lot of talk they may trade it. The chalk choices at Bet365, the centerman Brady Martin of Sault Ste. Marie, Caleb Denoyer of Moncton at plus 150. But the big skilled winger, Porter Martone of the AHL, he may have the most upside there. And if somebody is trading into that pick, maybe even Utah itself, then a power forward, perhaps the only true power forward in the draft, at least with that kind of skill, could well be the enticement. Martone is plus 450 to go 4th overall. In fact, before some of these centermen started to get some helium late, he would have absolutely been the chalk pick at number 4. So you get him at plus 450 to go 4th overall. Giddy up. This segment proudly presented by Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Frank Corrado coming up next. Secure some price from the historic Wall Center.
The BZ4X. Make sure that is emblazoned in your brain. You're going to see them everywhere because they are a great car at a great price, and they are so fun to drive. Go take one for a test drive at your local Pacific Toyota dealers. You'll find out everything that I'm talking about, and they'll remind you, HOV lane, never stopping at the gas pumps ever again. Starting to sound a little bit great. LE all-wheel drive editions, which are perfect for BC life, now have a $5,000 incentive. Plus, you can get financing, 0.99% APR over 36 months. You'll want to go shop Toyota.ca. Go visit your dealer today.
Frank Corrado is a former Vancouver Canuck, a TSN hockey analyst, former Calder Cup finalist, too.
That's true.
With the Utica Comets. How are you, Frank?
Good, boys. All good. I'm happy to see the boys got it done, however many years later. What is it, 10 years later?
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
10 years.
That's awesome. Good. That's cool.
Yeah. So what can that do for an organization? What can that do for some of these young men?
I think the hope is that it turns into, do you remember when John Cooper and Norfolk won the Calder Cup and they had those dominant teams and a lot of those players just moved on up to Tampa and they weren't necessarily like the marquee guys, although they were really good, like, Killorn and Tyler Johnson, very good players. And they grew with that group and they were winners at the AHL level and winners at the NHL level when it was all said and done. And I think there's something to be said for, like we talked about last week, I think, where you train and breed winners. And those guys, it's like a contagious thing where it just kind of becomes what you're all about, right? Like now those guys are all branded champions and they grinded. Like, let me tell you something, man, going far in the AHL playoffs and winning it, like I didn't win it, but we went far. That is a grind of like sacrifice, like different than the NHL. Mm-hmm. There's not big bonus money on the line. There's not huge TV ratings. You're doing it for the betterment of your career and the guys that your brothers that you're with. And so I guess now the hope becomes, can those guys parlay that into NHL success as winners? And that's, that's what they're halfway to doing, I guess. Now you just have to find a way to do it at the NHL level. That's what I think you get out of that.
Stretching out a lot of these guys, too, especially the Euros that haven't played a lot of games. Even Archer Silovs, he's never been a workhorse goaltender because, in the development league, you don't generally get the 60-start guy. This is quite a year of stretching out your legs and figuring out how to make it through a regular season in the playoffs, too, huh? Yeah,
exactly, right? Like you learn what your boundaries are as a player. You learn how to push yourself at times, how to pace yourself, and I mean that in the right way, right? Like when to pick your battles and how to make sure your body's ready to withstand everything that playoff hockey and the grueling schedule of the travel and the games every other nights entails. But yeah, I think that when you do something like that, and I remember like looking back on our experience, you kind of push yourself mentally and physically to a different level where, I remember one of the games ended in 4 overtimes. Like it went to the 4th overtime. And I remember sitting in my stall afterwards just saying, thank God it's done. Like I almost got to the point where you're like, I just need this game to end. We can't do it anymore. And then once you get to the final and we lost in the final, you're like, you're heartbroken, you're crushed. But at the same time, you're like, I'm so battered and beat up. I needed the reprieve. And of course you would have liked to win, and these guys won. So they get that. Like, but I think you learn about, what a grueling grind it actually can be, and what you're, where you can kind of take your body, which is pretty amazing to see yourself do that.
I know you weren't able to watch every minute of these games, so I won't ask you for details on how they got it done, but the end result is 2 guys in particular stood out for me in terms of their ability to rise and score big goals at big times. Linus Karlsson did it in volume with 14 goals in the playoffs. And Klimovich, who's sort of been left for dead as a prospect to some degree, didn't have the volume, but had the timeliness of scoring overtime goals, game winners, and big goals like he did last night in the clincher as well. Now, again, the volume's not there for Klimovich in the playoffs necessarily, but he had a really nice regular season, and he's starting to show that maybe he's still worth keeping around. These two players, what does it do for each of these two guys in terms of just their own confidence, but also how the organization might view them?
Well, the first thing is the confidence from the player. I think that goes without saying. Just, when you build your internal highlight reel, now the most recent highlights are big ones, right? Like playoff goals, stuff on the line, and meaningful moments. So that obviously is first and foremost. But as far as the organization, I think there's always this working kind of evaluation on where the players are at. And a lot of it is, regular season stuff. We'll watch you play 2 games in a weekend, and then we'll watch you play 2 games next weekend, and we'll catch you on a Wednesday. But to watch guys play when the chips are down, you only get so many moments to actually do that. Like there's not a lot of moments in the course of a regular season where you get to see guys in the AHL and say chips are down. Like you used to be able to do it maybe on a 3-and-3. And you would watch a guy on a Sunday afternoon in Bridgeport and say, what has he got? Because they just played in Providence and they played in Manchester, and now they're in Bridgeport on Sunday in front of 6 people. What are you bringing to the table, right? Little bit of a character revealer. But I think you got your free character revealer here in the playoffs, so that should do a lot for as far as how those guys are viewed within the organization. The big thing, though, is from the player's point of view, you can't trick yourself into thinking that because you did all that, there's a spot waiting for you, or they're opening the door for you. You have to still go in and like break it down, because at the end of the day, the NHL team, it's different. Like those are guys' jobs. There's contracts and term and millions of dollars attached to that. So you might get the opportunity come training camp. You're still going to have to find a way to break down that door, though, because it's, the way that the salary cap and the world we live in these things are allocated, like there's like a little bit of a pecking order. You have to disrupt that pecking order still.
Right. I want to move on here to the big Canucks, but just one last one on the baby Canucks. Linus Karlsson, the hero here in terms of goal scoring for the club through its run. He's a wall work net front guy. Frank, we have heard so much about how the AHL is a different game, that it is less predictable than the NHL. Guys aren't in quite the same spots that they're supposed to be. It's a little more helter-skelter. For a guy who makes his living on the boards and in the net front, how similar is the AHL game to the NHL game? How much should that translate?
In that regard, it is similar, because you're going to do the same things and realize that at the NHL level, things filter and funnel to the front of the net really quickly. Like I found, everything that you said about the AHL and the NHL there, it's all true, right? Like it can be a little more scrambled. Guys in the AHL aren't necessarily in their spots as quickly as they're supposed to be compared to the NHL. But the big thing, it's like, when you get to the NHL level, you realize the play on the perimeter and like the hanging out there and stick handling, it doesn't happen as much. Like it gets to the net in a hurry. Watch how the Panthers played against Edmonton. That puck would get dumped in and the forecheck would be on. And it's like, if they're getting it back within 5 seconds, that thing got funneled. And that is something that I think a lot of NHL teams aspire to be like. And in the AHL, I think at times it can, the cycle can hang out and it can stay to the outside. So for him, that's your game. Do it at the NHL level, and that's something that I think is translatable, because I don't know, there's something to be said about a guy like Burrows, who we all saw and I played with, where when there was a whistle in front of the opposition's goaltender, there was number 14. He was just always around it, and I think coaches realize that stuff and they say, like, I know where this guy's going to be. So there's a level of predictability to that. So in that regard, I do think that's something that can easily translate.
If he had speed, Burrows would be the perfect. He just doesn't have the Burrows skating. It's the only problem with Linus Karlsson, but we'll see if it translates. Though, one last little thing. on the short off season now for these guys. How hard is it for them? This is deeper than the Stanley Cup final now. Like this is the shit. Are you still feeling it? Are in early September? Are you still exhausted? What do you think?
This is where, like, in my experience, this was the toughest part, because I finished that playoff run. I had played with a separated AC joint, and I had played with a broken bone in my hand, and I had missed 5 games to let the bone just heal just enough that I didn't have to shoot it up anymore, right? Because we were shooting it up for a bit, and I couldn't feel my hand, and I was playing awful because I couldn't stick handle. So that's the tough part now. All these guys have wear and tear and aches and pains and would have been playing through stuff, and now you probably need more. And this, I think, applies more to the younger guys than the veteran guys, because you need more time to heal and recover. And then generally, the younger guys, your goal is bigger, faster, stronger every summer. So how do you get bigger, faster, stronger in less than half the time and be ready to go take someone's job come training camp? Like that, it's really hard. It's like it's mission impossible, really, for the guys.
For a guy like Lekramaki, that's the concern here. Is he going to be able to bulk up and be stronger for camp, right?
Exactly, because if his season was done in the middle of April, he would have taken his 3.5 weeks off, and he would have started this program, and it would have been 16, 18 weeks long, and it's like made to get you, on the moving treadmill for training camp time. He doesn't have that luxury now. So at some point here, he's going to have to wing it to a certain degree, because you just don't have the time. You don't have the lead up time, but you should have an organization who understands that and recognizes that and says, if he doesn't have the training camp that we think he should have, well, look how could we have expected that based on what he just went through? So that's why you still keep like long-term vision and long-term plans in mind for situations like that.
Okay, bear with me on this one, but we just want to outline what we're talking about here in Vancouver. Archer Silovs, the playoff MVP, obviously boosted his stock here in the organization's eye, if not beyond. Saravelli reporting that a third of the league is on the goaltender market, and that's everything from starter to co-starter to pure backup. It's a pretty weak free agent class of goaltenders, where Jake Allen, of all people, stands alone and above the rest. So we're asking on our Whistler Golf Club poll question, if Demko is the best chip to get him a top 6 forward, given the environment here, should the Canucks trade him? What do you think, Frank?
Well, I guess it always is going to depend on what the return is, right? And I wonder if there's a team who's been on the precipice of winning a Stanley Cup the last 2 years and is a combined 3 wins away from doing it, that is, urgent enough to say, we need a goalie. And is it John Gibson or is it Thatcher Demko? Or if it's not those two guys, who is it? Is it Swayman in Boston? I guess what I'm saying is, like, can you prey on someone's vulnerability here in the crease? And would a team be willing to say, we can make the deal as soon as possible? We don't have to wait and see what the injury situation is, like how it's going to hold up. It sounds greasy to say something like that, but that's the reality of the marketplace, right? But there are teams like the UFA market. It's like, it's Jake Allen, it's Vladar, it's Lyon. We're not talking about guys that are moving the needle, right? And the thing about this, the Silovs thing, he played great. He was the MVP. He also played really well, I think, at times. He had some unbelievable games last year in the playoffs for the Canucks, right? That didn't necessarily translate to the NHL success this year. So now I guess you're banking on, if you were to make that deal, the AHL MVP success translating to NHL success right away. So there's no, I don't know if there's necessarily a guarantee, but he's probably better served after going through what he just went through.
Since you brought it up, I mean, the Canucks are trying to be competitive next year. Would you move Demko in division to the Oilers?
I mean, I think that just depends on the return, right? Like, if you're getting something that you think is going to cancel out the effect of potentially playing against a guy who's a franchise goalie who can be one of the best in the league when he's healthy in your own division, then you'll have that conversation. But I mean, the division thing, it's funny. Like, I think the division thing used to be such a big conversation because you would play that team so much in the regular season. Now you don't. Like, you play them, what, 3 or 4 times at the most.
One more
right?
in the Central.
It's one more game. The issue is if you meet in the first round of the playoffs, that's the guy that can steal you one. Whereas in the past, the Oilers didn't really have a guy who could steal you one, right? I think it depends on the return. I just don't know who would the Oilers be able to give up that keeps the Canucks competitive right away. They don't have much to give up.
Nuge, but he's got a no move, so he's not going to.
There is no young forward, young top 6 forward on Edmonton. They're all sort of older
But
guys.
I think they would trade for Nuge, but again, Nuge is probably not wanting to leave.
Well,
it would have to be like,
cost you more than Demko, I think.
It would have to be like that Sam O'Reilly, who's their first round pick, who's the centerman who played for London. Like, it's got to start there, and it's got to go plus, I would think. But that's I don't know.
That's a future trade.
That's a future.
That's
right.
Frank.
That's not that. Yeah, that's not helping you today. That's helping you down the road.
Yeah.
What did you make of the Zegras trade?
The return, I guess, is underwhelming just based on the fact that he's been on the market for so long, but it almost feels like people are just saying Ryan Poehling is just like the worst player ever. He's actually he's a good third line center in the NHL.
Right.
It's not like, it's not like this guy's a complete stiff. So yeah, the return is underwhelming because, Trevor Zegras, when he was at his best, is top 5 most exciting players to watch offensively. Like that's how dynamic and skilled he is. And I find it interesting that he goes to a place like Philly. They can use some skill. Like they're in a situation where they should take a swing on a guy who has a lot of upside offensively because they just don't have a lot of that right now. They're still working to put the pieces in place. But Rick Tocchet is there now. So how is the approach going to be with Rick Tocchet, who we all know very well now from his time in Vancouver? Is it going to be, the Phil Kessel, I'm going to level with you, we're players coach mentality, or is it going to be, I'm ruling with an iron fist, and if I see stupid stuff at the blue line, like we're gonna have issues here, kind of a la John Tortorella, who was just there. I think he's got to go with the softer approach with Zegras. I think he's got to try and find a way to level with him because I can imagine the Cronin approach in Anaheim was not what was most suitable for Trevor Zegras. So I think you're going to have to work with him and kind of level with him on a personal level and get to know the guy and see what makes him tick and show him that, okay, we're going to be patient, we're going to work together, and we want to get you to where you're supposed to be, which is one of the most exciting, dynamic players in the league.
Well, as we know, Tocchet does level with you at a very nice level. Like he communicates, I think, just fine. But ultimately, the bottom line is ice time. and that's where it'll be meted out, right? Like he can communicate with Zegras all that we want in the appropriate way. But ultimately, Rick Tocchet just won't play Zegras if he doesn't feel. And Andrei Kuzmenko and Nils Höglander will vouch for this. Like if you don't do the job, you're not going to play.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But Philly, like this is the right move for a team like Philadelphia. It is. Like they're a work in progress. They're one of the few teams in the league that we can honestly say is still rebuilding and not expected to push up the standings yet. So, I mean, I like it. I hope it works out. I hope it works out for the player because, he's spent some years now in Anaheim where you've almost forgotten that he's there. He's moved around positionally. I still don't think he's a natural center. Like I think he's a winger. But I hope it works out for him and them because I like when teams take swings on guys that might be undervalued or underachieving and they get them to where they're supposed to be. I think it's a great story, and I think it's part of the I think it's part of the success that the Florida Panthers have had, where they found undervalued contracts and players that were undervalued, whether it was Bennett or Reinhart or Carter Verhaeghe, who they bring in on a $1 million AAV, and they found a way to get those guys to where they are now, and it's the cream of the crop. So I think there could potentially be a cool story behind this all.
A lot of buzz around Thomas Hertl this morning with Vegas as they look to open up some cap space for a Mitch Marner pursuit. What kind of player are we talking about there?
I mean, really good player, very well-rounded, I find, with Thomas Hertl. Does a little bit of everything well, and has a nice, a nice base of who he is as a player, where he can play on both sides of the puck, and I think is maybe underappreciated a little bit offensively, just based on, maybe you guys wouldn't do this, but if you live out east, you don't watch a lot of Thomas Hertl, but I think he is a little underappreciated offensively. The thing with this Vegas is, they brought him in when he was hurt. He's making, because I believe San Jose's eating money, so he's 6'7" against the cap, and he's, a guy who can play center or wing. You're trying to get that money off the books to potentially bring in Mitch Marner, who's a winger, but kind of, I guess, a similar vein, responsible, Selke tendencies, more so for Marner than Hertl. But I think there would be a team that would be really happy to get Thomas Hertl and would pay a huge price to do so, because if you think he's your solution at center ice, there's not a lot of solutions here on the board for unrestricted free agency. Teams that are really going to have to address this position are going to have to take a swing on Hertl in this type of situation. So, I guess we're going to see where it goes.
None that are 6'3", 215 either. This is the package. He's not a perfect player, obviously, because he's not the top player in the league by any stretch, but that is a nice setup.
Well, and can play the middle, too,
yes.
right?
Yeah. I think that's what you'd be getting him for. I think you're getting him to play the middle. And just I just think a smart, well-rounded, good player, who has a lot to offer, a guy who scored 32 goals. You're getting a 30
5 years left. 5 years left on the contract at 31. But in the here and now, and what players are going to cost you in free agency this year and going forward, a reasonable bet.
Yeah.
Frankie, thank you very much for this. Appreciate you switching days, coming a little early this week on a Tuesday. We will catch up next week, my friend.
All right, boys. Have a good one.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sick Harrison Price rate. Some blackout date supply based on availability. A reminder, Friday, Jeff Merrick and the Sheets, they have your draft special. They are going live from 4 p.m. Pacific time. NHL at large, Jeff, Pierre Maguire breaking it all down. Don't miss the Sheet draft special, 4 p.m. on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. And, of course, we will have you covered on the Vancouver Canucks. No noon show Friday. The show will be during the National Hockey League entry draft. And if something happens earlier in the day, we've got you covered here.
I'm going to be stationed in Toronto just in case the Canucks sign Mitch Marner, and I need to track him down.
For a one-on-one?
Yes.
Are you going to go to his home like some of those Leaf fans?
Yeah, I'll be camped out.
Yeah, because
somewhere on the bridle path, probably.
He'll appreciate that. Yeah. The Golf Report brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club. Keegan Bradley, he wins his home tournament, the Travelers in New England, thanks to a Tommy Fleetwood collapse on the 18th hole. Poor Tommy, he's still looking for that elusive first PGA Tour win.
His career earnings now, without a PGA Tour win, $20 million.
He's in the middle of the fairway on 18, 100 or so yards out, and he makes a last-second change on club and winds up short.
Yeah.
Oh, the pressure. and then 3 in from there.
And Nick Taylor, remember, he has a big part in Fleetwood's bridesmaid reputation because he was in the Canadian Open.
That's right.
Playoff.
Incidentally, did you hear? We missed this in the aftermath of the U.S. Open a week ago Monday. J.J. Spawn talked about having a Nick Taylor moment. Isn't that cool?
That's awesome. That's really
Isn't
cool.
that cool?
Yeah.
And then apparently they texted each other. Apparently Taylor texted Spawn and said like, "Hey, congratulations, nice putt, blah blah blah." And Spawn wrote back, "Mine was better." So it sounds like they're pretty good mates, and we're having some fun. And with two of the absolute, unforgettable putts in recent PGA Tour history. Anyways, Keegan Bradley, he's played really well. So well now that it's possible he could qualify for the Ryder Cup team he will be captaining this September at Bethpage in New York.
Which takes away the awkward captain's pick of himself, which a lot of people were calling for. A lot of people were like, hey, stop with the shame. You deserve it. You should be picking yourself because you've had such a great year. If he can just outright qualify, that takes that away,
Well, there was a school of thought that he wouldn't pick himself, that would be gauche, that he would have to qualify for it. I don't know, though. Keegan really loves the Ryder Cup and playing in the Ryder Cup. And
he's playing so well.
I think Keegan, doesn't doubt himself all that much. Bradley said after the win, quote, "This definitely changes things," but he didn't get into specifics or anything like that because, look, he could finish as one of the top 6 American players here, which means he's automatically on the team. He would be the first playing captain since Arnold Palmer in 1963.
Really?
And has said that should he play, his vice captains, Jim Furyk, Brandt Snedeker, Kevin Kisner, Webb Simpson, would handle duties. But, Blake, there are now people in the golf world openly wondering about whether Tiger Woods would be called out of the bullpen. Now, you may remember Tiger Woods bowed out of this captaincy, saying too much of his time was being taken up by this PGA Tour merger talk with LIV and all of that. But the word is, and those around Tiger also believe that he just didn't want to have to deal with the public face of being the captain, the media, the making picks, the doing all the promos,
Has he not actually
the
done it yet?
administration. No, he's never done it.
Really? Oh.
And so that this fly-in, drop-in role would really suit him, especially because it would get him some experience before he ultimately takes on the full captain role, and people believe that will be in a couple
Why
of
was
years.
Keegan Bradley named in the first place at the age of 39?
So a few things here, and we did an item on this at the time. Number one, it is run by the PGA of America, so they tend to prioritize and give preference to former PGA championship winners, and Keegan is that. You do have to have a number of years on tour, and Keegan has that, even though he's not the oldest guy. And then, Blake, you may remember the tortured logic that the PGA announced when naming him captain, that the tournament or the cup is being played at Bethpage in New York. Keegan went to school at nearby St. John's University in New York City.
Yeah, you have to.
They also cited the fact his Aunt Pat is an LPGA Hall of Famer and that he is the son of a PGA Tour member. No, it's a little bit dubious. There were a lot of people cocked eyebrow going, this is a little early for a guy who really hasn't been that great over his career. Like, he won that PGA, played very good golf in that era, and then sort of went away for several years before this renaissance we're seeing. Anyways, I think there are some on the American side of things who are saying, hell yeah, just make Keegan a player and bring in the big cat.
Yeah.
And we've got ourselves a captain.
Yeah. Yeah, because, again, nice touring pro, one big win.
Yeah, really good.
But not really captain's material.
Well, I mean, is he 39 years old?
Yeah, 39.
Yeah, I mean, that's really early.
And man, he just turned 30.
No, I know.
He's a fresh 39.
I know.
Like, he's in the middle of his career.
No, I know. And it's out of sorts for both Europe and the U.S., right?
Yes.
Like, Europe tends to have like the older
old guard, yeah.
Exactly. The U.S. tends to go a little bit younger with its captain, but this one is
We've
a bit of an outlier.
We've
to say
had
the
the
least.
flirty story of playing captain before. Like,
Well, the other thing
it's been close. But
the other thing I think they like, Blake, is that Keegan is so emotional.
Yes,
and
so-
is so quick to fire up a crowd, like you saw it happen on the 72nd green Sunday. And I think they feel like we've lost too many of these recently. We're going to have that New York City crowd, and you know that New York City crowd hits different at Bethpage. And we're going to have a captain there to really rile them up and
call
make
in
life,
Justin Leonard again.
Make life uncomfortable for the Europeans. Anyways, it should be fun, and we'll see. I mean, we're getting late in the day here. I mean, that was the last elevated event. You've got the Open Championship, you got the playoffs, and then we're going to have that U.S. team.
Yep.
The Golf Report brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Prime time's filling up fast, so get there, get yours in. And whether you're golfing or just visiting Whistler, check out the patio at Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. It's overlooking the 18th green. It's home of Whistler's best burger. There's an awesome local beer selection. Watch the golf, and in some cases, watch the Bears. The Bears just walk on through the 18th fairway like they own the place. If you have a group of 12 or more, tell us about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups.
We got to get the video up there of the two little babies putting the Cubs put in there.
Oh, one on one side of the green, one on the other side. Mom doesn't know which one to tend to. The next thing you know, she's going to deal with that one. This one grabs the flagstick. I mean, the only thing that was missing is the the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And Attenborough voicing the proceedings. Huge 24 hours in the world of soccer kicks off tonight. Canada, El Salvador in Houston in the final group match of the Gold Cup. Canada advances with a win or a draw. They could be eliminated with a loss, but that would require a huge swing in goal differential as the Canadians +6 after that famous victory in the opener over Honduras. El Salvador is -2. Canada is most likely to win this group and would play either Jamaica or Guatemala in the quarterfinals.
Which is a great draw.
Otherwise, if they were to sink to second in this group, and that is far more possible than not advancing, they would be second place and most likely face number 33 Panama in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with that fire just yet.
Former Whitecap Derek Cornelius is good to return after missing time with a lower body injury. Alas, the news is not good for Whitecaps' Ali Ahmed. He has been sent home with an ankle injury, a high ankle sprain. This is a dreadful injury for Ali and for the Whitecaps. He is going to miss some time here, Blake, and this is after Sam Adekugbe of the Whitecaps has already suffered a season-ending injury during this international window.
It's a lot of soccer right now, and they've already played 4 international matches, for heaven's sakes, in this window right now, and you don't
looking at least 2 more.
You're not stopping the players from going to play international soccer as a club team, obviously, but it is one of the risks. And the only good news I can say about this, and even if you want to extend this to the Ryan Gauld story with the Whitecaps, is they're not in Leagues Cup. So they get a built-in 2 to 3 week buffer at the start of August where everybody can get healthy. Now they've got, 4 or 5 games before that where you'd love their services.
We're going to get into those in a second.
Goodness.
Estacio's Porto club is out at the Club World Club. He played all 90 yesterday.
So he's not playing
So
today.
he's not playing tonight.
Yeah.
Jesse Marsh, Canada coach, cleared of any wrongdoing after a CONCACAF investigation. Canada Soccer apparently reportedly assessed a couple of minor fines for unrelated procedural items relating to match operations. It's always such big language in soccer when handing down any kind of discipline. They don't ever tell you what happened. It's always very technical
But
terms.
also, it seems like much ado about nothing in the end. So, why not just keep things behind closed doors until you need to talk about them?
Gotta save face, Blake. Caps tomorrow in a first-place showdown at BC Place versus San Diego FC, the expansion club in MLS. With the loss, Vancouver would relinquish first place in the West for the first time this season. albeit with the game in hand. They would be the leaders on points percentage. With a win, they'd be 5 points up with that game in hand. And if Minnesota were to lose, they'd be 5 points up on just San Diego. This marks the start of the second half of the MLS season for the Caps, and the schedule in July, brutal. They are on the road for 5 straight, Blake. In what world?
Yeah, when we saw this calendar, I was like, really? We do not get roof open BC Place?
In July, I mean,
it's ridiculous.
Well, not for MLS matches, at least. LAFC, LA Galaxy, Colorado, Houston, and San Diego. And they play a 5-match stretch in 15 days in July, which includes the Canadian Championship tie with Valor FC. That's here at BC Place. That's the only home match.
Unbelievable.
July 9th. Kickoff tomorrow versus San Diego is 7:30. Get your tickets, whitecapsfc.com. Vancouver Canadians return in at Bailey this evening. First of a rare 9-game homestand. They'll play 6 versus Tri-City this week. And then after an off day Monday, a 3-game set against Everett, including a Canada Day nooner next Tuesday. It's hipster night at the ballpark tonight. Post-game fireworks Thursday, Fortis Friday nooner, and Marvel Superhero Day on Saturday, including a comic book giveaway. Tickets 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com.
I watched the new Captain America last night.
Blake is without wife and children this week, and your first night after a later golf game for us was Captain America?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't great.
Poll question results from the Whistler Golf Club. Poll question on Monday. What do you care about more, next season or the long-term future of the Vancouver Canucks? And the people said...
People continue to say long-term future.
79%. Vancouver, next season matters most for the long-term future if you want to keep Quinn. I see what you did there.
That was the exercise.
Skridler, been a fan since 91, passionately since 94. This is probably the lowest point of interest since then. We are now seeing the foundational cracks and never having completed a proper rebuild. They put a coat of paint on it and hope it stays. And that approach doesn't work.
And that's a good take, except for the fact, and you say it's the lowest ebb, and I get what you're saying in terms of just the tone and excitement.
Saying for him,
yeah, but that's an almost it's an unbelievable thing to say, Matt. They have maybe the best player in franchise history on their team.
Well, yeah, I mean, as bad as last season got, we talked about it. It was nowhere near the depths of the Desjardins era when they just had
no players
worth watching.
No players.
Yeah. Except a late in career Henrik and Daniel occasionally. And Hendy says long-term at this point, but I don't buy for a second that ownership thinks that way. Right now, other than a couple of pieces, they're set up like an expansion team. And I'm not talking Vegas.
That's a pretty good take, actually.
Errors and omissions.
Expansion Vancouver Canucks. We should just refer to them.
Errors and omissions. I said Canada could play Costa Rica in the quarterfinals yesterday. I was mistaken. It's Panama.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff misspoke. He said Bjorkstrand when he meant Burakovsky when discussing that Seattle trade on the weekend, Seattle-Chicago trade.
And we errors on the omission side of things, Dan Hamhuis' rights.
Right.
Philadelphia Flyers traded the rights to Hamhuis to the Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
So it was both Pennsylvania teams.
Yeah, we knew Pittsburgh was involved.
Yeah.
And he wound up in Dallas, right?
That was in 2010. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyways, there you go. It's rare. And as you see with him, he doesn't always work out where you trade for a free agent's rights and then sign them.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do follow all our channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. Weekdays, remember Friday will be later because of the NHL draft. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.